I don't want to get involved in a deal if someone has to lose in order for me to benefit. It's like the people that step on 100 faces on the way to where they're going. In my mind, it's, I want us to work together and do something great so we can work together again.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Pay It Forward podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Sewert, along with my co-host, Keegan Walls, and today we are joined by Nick Roush.
Hi,
Nick
guys.
is a local real estate developer, owner of Roush Rentals.
Mm-hmm.
He has 7 different multifamily new construction developments in the La Crosse area, and also the co-founder of Rip Down Yoga with his wife, Mandy.
Yep.
So here to talk about all things real estate. We've had a lot of different real estate people on here, but I don't think we've had a new construction person on here. We had a guy last week who does not do any new construction, but rehabs current places. So excited to see what's all involved in a new development. So
Yeah, you bet. We can talk about real estate. We talk about yoga and how they blend together too. So
that's great. You don't hear those two interchange very often.
No. We'll have a chance today to talk about what I call the yoga of business. So
Okay.
we'll get there, I'm sure, at some point.
Cool. I like it. Tell us why real estate? What got you started in real estate in the first place?
Great question. So what got me started in the first place? I will absolutely blame my brother-in-law,
Okay.
who many years ago, this is when I was first, so I first started, I went to school for biomedical engineering, and I did not work in that field. I ended up working in the HVAC industry for about 20 years, actually. Hard to believe. And my brother-in-law gave me a book a long time ago, which I can't believe that I'm sure that you guys have read and that most of your guests have probably read too.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
That's the one. That's the one, right? Life-changing, right?
Yes.
And I've gifted that book more than any other book. Well, it's probably, that book's in my top 3 books of all time, which I'll share at some point. And not because it tells you what to do, but it's really about just a different way of thinking. And that book, I read it, and the knowledge was somewhat foreign and still made a ton of sense to me. My parents were both self-employed and entrepreneurial folks. My mom owned a beauty shop. My dad was in the commercial flooring business. And so I grew up in that culture. And when I was on the trajectory of career stuff and the HVAC business and whatever, what really jumped out at me and where real estate started to make sense to me was building freedom, right? And I make this joke that I was always a really good employee for a period of time, right? I work hard, do the thing, all that. But that for me, at the end of the day, freedom and freedom of flexibility was critically important. Because time, of course, is our most finite resource. And so the more I could leverage my time to be able to create other things became big for me. And the other thing out of that book that was huge for me, that is still a lesson that I repeat all the time when I'm doing business coaching with people or whatever, is if you'd like to make more money and you'd like to have more freedom, then you need to help more people. You need to help solve problems for somebody, right? Like if you look at all of the stocks that have gone nuts or the different things that go crazy in terms of business, it's usually because that market was really appealing and helped people in some way. I would, of course, make the case against that with social media, but that's a different story. So, I think there's more deleterious effects there than positive. But, in my eye, how I could help more people. And real estate was a great fit for that. And it started off in 1996, before I was married. But my wife and I were together at the time. This was before we were married, and I bought our first owner-occupied duplex.
Yep.
Right, and I was like, "This is great. We can rent this out, and that's awesome for them, and it helps lower our cost of living, and to be able to do that." And that was kind of the part where it began. And so.
And was this in after were you working?
Oh yeah,
for 20 years and then realized this wasn't early on?
Real estate, that was early on. That was when I first started working. So 1996, and I was working in the HVAC industry. Okay. And so real estate really was always a side hustle.
Yeah.
The whole time when I was in the HVAC industry. And so, I was young and not afraid to grind, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, real estate was like nights and weekends for a long time, and always, with the eye on rental property. So I did the owner-occupied duplex thing.
And do you remember how much you paid for that?
$60,000.
Wow. Any idea what it'd be worth today, or do you still own it?
No, I don't. Okay. I don't own it. I sold it. I don't know how long ago exactly now, but it was $60,000.
And there's not many duplexes under 200 now.
Yeah, I would guess it's probably $250,000, something like that. Yeah. It's a cool arts and crafts place, stucco, hardwood floors. We redid kitchens and baths and made it super cool. And built a garage there. It was a killer neighborhood. So I would guess it's probably $250,000 place these days. And it's funny. My office manager, who works for me now, grew up right around the corner, and I knew her mom. Her mom knew me. She came to my mom's beauty shop, and so that's a funny story I'll tell at some point too. But so we bought that, and then I at one point kind of resurrected Rich Dad Poor Dad a few years later, and it was like, okay, I need to get going, right? Like something needs to happen. So I bought some old beat up places, and my mom actually said these words to me when she came to check out one of the places. She goes, "Did you look at these before you bought them?" Like, just deadpan. I said, yes, with a question mark at the end, right? And then so began the fixing those places up. And that was some hard, great lessons learned. And this, I'm sure, will dovetail into conversation, but was great lessons in, it's like the whole winning and learning thing. It's not really losing, right? It's like you're winning and things are going good, or you're learning about things that don't work. I did a lot of learning about things that don't work. When I proceeded to put $60,000 in credit card debt into the building and then tore it down.
Oh. Yeah. Tell us how'd that happen?
Well, okay. So I kept just trying to make a silk hat out of a sow's ear, right? I kept trying to no matter how much lipstick I put in this thing, it just kept it just wasn't going to work, right? There were more mice living there than tenants. And I just couldn't take it. I'm like, I can't own something like this. It just doesn't work. It's not fair to the people that live there. Yeah. This isn't going to work. And it wasn't too far from Viterbo. And so I thought, okay, is it possible for me to sweep this thing and for us to build something new in its place and be able to make this work in a better way? And so I kind of pulled it together, and the numbers worked good enough that I could afford to swallow that, right? And sweep all that debt into the next project to be able to make it happen. And so we did that and tore the thing down, built a brand new building there, still there today. And then it went well enough, and I decided I wasn't crazy enough that I ended up buying the place right next door, tearing that house down, and then building the sister building right next to it. So 2 buildings next to each other. So, and that one wasn't quite such a bloodbath as the first one. That was kind of the trajectory there. And then what?
So roughly how many properties did you have before you went into doing new development?
Development full time?
Yeah.
I kind of owned the stuff I just shared.
Yeah.
And we bought an 8-unit and a couple duplexes and a 4-unit over on 11th Street and all the stuff that was sort of fell into what I would call our college portfolio.
Yeah.
Mostly college rental. But great places, really cool places. The place in 11th Street was super cool. That 4-unit was great. And so we owned all of that. I think it was maybe 60 units or so, something like that. And I was working in HVAC and loved that job. I worked with some spectacular people. And what was cool about that, for the first 10 years in my HVAC career, I was in controls and project management. So, and I'm talking about stuff for the school, the college campus, the hospital, right? Like really big stuff. And working in controls and project management, I had an opportunity to see when you work on the heating and cooling system, you actually connect to every discipline in the building. You get to know plumbing systems, electrical systems, all the HVAC systems, the physical construction of the building, the envelope, and I was always good at forming relationships. And so I got to learn so much about how buildings get built and how that, and I was lucky enough, because I was super lucky. Winona State University was one of my biggest customers, probably my biggest customer. And I took care of everything on that campus. There wasn't a square inch of that place that I wasn't controlling and didn't know how it worked and all that stuff. So whenever there was a new construction building, I was involved at the very beginning and got to see that whole process. So observing project management, general contracting, how does all this stuff work, and taking all that in, by osmosis as that stuff was happening. And so was in the HVAC business doing that for 10 years, and then left Train Company, started a new company with a few other people called Masters Building Solutions. And when I did that, that's when we bought Caledonia Street up on the north side, before Root Down Yoga even was an idea. And then I moved into sales engineering. So I was engineered sales of large HVAC equipment, chillers and boilers and air handlers and all the stuff that makes big buildings work. And I did that for 10 years. And through the course of that time, I loved that job. I loved the people I worked with, all the contractors we called on. My partner, Dan, who I used to work with, just one of the most amazing humans I've ever known. Working at Train and then later at Masters, I just had two of the most amazing bosses in history. One of them passed away a few years ago, God rest his soul. Just awesome humans I learned so much from. I'll share a quick one. So Murph, who passed away, Dwayne Murphy, Murph, and he had just this awesome thing that I was as green as the day is long when I first started. I didn't know anything about HVAC. I just knew electronics, and I came from this, biomedical world, and I'm in the HVAC business, but I put in car stereos and home stuff and all that through college. That was my college job at Sound World back in the day. And I would come to Murph with stuff that didn't work and something was wrong or whatever. And he said, okay, Nick, here's the deal. You're not allowed to come to me with any problems unless you also have some idea how you're going to solve it. Yep. I want you to show up to me with what's going on and a solution at the same time. And he was so great about empowering people that way. And so you'd show up with the solution and he'd kind of help you tune it up, put a bow on it, make it pretty, and then would empower you to go do the thing, right? Like he wasn't going to micromanage you. It wasn't going to watch over your shoulder. You were going to go do the thing. And so that was always something that I remembered and brought forward in project management, general contracting and stuff is when people come to me with stuff, I generally will come back to them with more questions, right? Like, well, I don't know. What do you think we should do? Yeah. I don't know. What went wrong? How can we not make this happen again? So anyway, worked in HVAC, and then real estate was kind of growing. And then I was making great money doing that. And I sort of put real estate on hold for a while and actually considered selling everything and just doing that. Yep. And at some point I realized that doing that was never going to lead to the freedom that I was looking for. And my capacity to help create things for others was super limited as well. And so it was, I guess, 8 years ago now, going on 8, I went kind of all in on our development, Sunset Terrace, over on the corner of Highway 16 and Gillette Street. And kind of put all the chips on the table. We're going to build this thing. And I did that kind of while I was still working at Masters, which was really challenging. And it went okay. And realized there was a market for this. And then with that, combined with the other stuff I owned, put me in a place where I could leverage that to be able to make the jump to doing that stuff full time. So that's a long answer to your question, but that's how I got there into new construction development.
And that's all you've ever done since?
Yeah, that and teaching yoga, right? And being part of Root Down. So, that's what we've been doing since then.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you ever, so you started off doing the project management and general contracting right off the bat, and you just used the skills that you had learned from others?
Exactly.
Cool.
I was able to learn so much. And the beauty, I had this great thing when I worked at Train, and I was in controls and project management. I got to go work inside of lots of other businesses, right? And I got to know everybody from Boiler Room Bob to Susie CEO. I got to know everybody that worked at that place. And I got to absorb work culture at different places, how these organizations function. And one of my yoga teachers has a great expression. He said, you only get to be in life one of two things, a warning or an example, right? And so I got to see both. Oh, these are great examples of how to manage people and how to work with others and how to build relationships that are lasting, and other examples of don't do that, right? This doesn't work. Look at how dysfunctional this environment is. And I got to be like a fly on a wall and get really engaged in all these different places and making those relationships. So I was able to, I guess, observe that, absorb it, and parlay that into my own future with the things I was doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Can you give us kind of like a 10,000-foot overview of what a new development looks like? Like from buying the raw land to the finished product, what is that? What are the steps involved with that?
Yeah. Well, how many times is this said in real estate? Location, right, is everything. And I sort of have a little bit of a cheat code, I call it, around here because I'm born and raised in La Crosse.
Yeah.
Right. So I know everywhere around here. I know how it feels, where traffic is and where people are and whether something's got the right vibe and feel. And sort of that just intangible local knowledge is so, so helpful. So 10,000-foot view, first thing you got to do is, what are you trying to create? And then at the same time, where could it go? And at first, I would say when I was getting involved that my development eye was more opportunistic, right? Like, where is there land? What can I afford to do? How can I back into that? And now I guess I sort of have a little bit of the luxury of being a little bit more discerning. And not to say that I can be choosy about it, but now I can really be more intentional with who's my customer, where does this need to be? And it's also helped, my office manager, Susan, who's amazing and is just unbelievable. And I really collaborate on all this stuff throughout the number of years that we've worked together, really refining our mission, who we're about, and who our customer is and who we're trying to serve. And so I start with that when I'm looking at a place or a space for development. I start with who am I trying to serve? Who's my customer? How can I help them? What are the things that they want? What's the realities of what they can afford? Right? Especially as, interest costs are radically higher, cost of construction radically higher. I'm not doing a great job of answering your question.
No, sorry.
So I start with who first, and then I kind of back into where and what we're going to build to make that work. And then starts, and this is a term of endearment. It's not a bad term. Then starts kind of the city hall dance and the neighborhood communication, right? Where there's just a process of what has to happen there. And, for me, the last thing I want to do is shove something down everybody's throat, right? I want to have a conversation with all the people involved. Who are the stakeholders? Who does this matter to? Because, NIMBY, not in my backyard, is a real challenge. And this is kind of where the yoga comes in. And I'm also kind of an enthusiast in behavioral psychology and being a salesman my whole life and evolutionary psychology and just kind of why we do what we do. And, as humans, we're automatically afraid of things we don't understand. Automatic, right? Because if you think of that, rewind the clock 10,000 years, right? We, of course, need to be afraid of things we don't understand because it might kill us, right? And so it's sort of a built-in feature, not a bug for us as people. And so having that conversation with how can I help them understand what's going on? A great example of this is when we did the Green Bay Street project. The neighborhood thought the sky was going to fall. They were really nervous and they were really upset because in their vernacular, right, rental means the really troubled house from the slumlord down the street. Yeah. That's what rental means for them. Yeah. And how do they know I'm not that guy, right? And so then it's coming in with, here's what this is going to look like. Here's, kind of what it's going to rent for. Here's who I'm guessing the tenant here is going to be, right? Because that place was basically 2 blocks from Gunderson's employee entrance, right? Like I know this is going to have residents and nursing people, CNAs, and that as time went on, that's exactly who the tenant ended up being because of proximity. And I made friends with the tenants. They were skeptical, or friends with the neighbors, and they were skeptical. And then once the building was built, we got things in place, everybody was friends, and it was great. And I would plow and take care of the alley and, help out with the things around there. And it's like, oh, this is awesome. So my point in that isn't to pat myself on the back. It's about, forming those first relationships about where this is going to be and what it's going to be. Same thing happened at Century Place. There was, up in Alaska, there was a lot of opposition to that from the resident neighbors, homeowners. Because again, like rental means something bad. And we went and had lots of conversation. I, took all the arrows for hours and talked through and answered their questions and was honest with them about who we are, what we do, and encouraged everybody. I said, drive past, do a drive-by at any one of our properties, any day of the week, anytime.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to meet you there, although I'm happy to. And you just take a look at like the vibe. Is it clean? Is the dumpsters clean? Is their landscaping nice? Just go check it out, right? And can't make anybody do anything, but help people understand and believe that we're trying to do something good.
Yep.
And so that's the next step, right? Is that
do you sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. No.
Do you own the property before you have to go through and get that, or is that like kind of contingent?
Yeah, it's under contract, but under
contingent on getting that approved.
Yeah. Okay. And that's kind of a standard thing in what I do. You've got some long diligence periods because it takes a while. Yeah. I mean, I know the ropes and doing everything right, you hope to get done in 6 months. That's what it takes to make that happen. And generally, Austin, I would say that my flywheel from the time that like this is an idea that, oh, maybe this could happen there. This could be really cool. To the time we have a shovel in the dirt can be 18 to 24 months.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a long flywheel, right? So, that first part is like, oh, could this happen? And then it's, okay, if I'm going to go make this pitch, I've got to have some idea what it's going to look like. I've got to have some idea of a civil plan and how's this whole space going to lay out? What are these buildings going to look like? Because if you're not in the business, people generally can't visualize what it's going to be because it's not what they do, right? Yep. Just like it would be hard for me to visualize what they do.
Yep.
So same. So you got to show up and create that picture of what it is you're going to do. And then I think what's also, 10,000 foot view critically important is, and it helps now, is having a track record of doing what you said you're going to do, right? There's a lot of people in new development that don't do a good job of that and sort of leave a trail of bodies where their subcontractors won't work for them again. And they didn't honor their commitments about what they were trying to build or what they were trying to do. And the scar tissue around that is challenging for them. And, for me, and this will dovetail directly into this, and this is sort of part of my whole approach, is what I call the yoga of business, which is I don't want to get involved in a deal if someone has to lose in order for me to benefit, right? Like I want the city to win, the neighborhood to win, my tenants to win, all my contractors to win, my employees to win. I want everybody to benefit from what we're going to do. Because otherwise, like if I'm approaching business in any other way, and this is what I think is so just heartbreaking and broken about hustle culture today, is it's like the people that step on 100 faces on the way to where they're going. And then if you function like that, you're constantly looking for the next sucker just in order to keep going with what you're doing. And that's awful. Yeah. In my mind, it's, I want us to work together and do something great so we can work together again and do something again and do the next project again. Our contractors love working with us because they know that the things are well planned. They can get in, do their stuff, get out, make money, and we can keep doing that and repeating that. So, City Hall, neighborhood stuff.
Yep.
And then now it's okay. Look, this is going to work. Now we're going to go through the approval processes. We've got some agreement. We're going through all the approval processes, whatever they happen to be. So that could be conditional use permits. It could be plan unit development. It could be zoning changes. It could be getting landlines redrawn to fit what you're doing, like all the stuff that goes along with that. And then we go through, and once we're kind of there, now we've got state approval processes where you're getting plans approved and all that stuff through the architectural processes. And that's, civil, architectural, plumbing, electrical, fire, and all the disciplines that go into building a building. And at some point, usually after 18, 24 months, like I said, after that all started, we actually put a shovel in the ground and start doing something.
And that's really the fun part, I would imagine, is seeing that come to life.
Yeah, it's both for me.
Okay.
It's interesting. So I happened across a podcast a while ago. I really enjoy Tim Ferriss's show. He gets great guests, super smart guy, and he's great at interviewing people. And this guy named Richard Koch, who's an English guy, look up the podcasts on Tim's show, and he has written books all surrounding the 80-20 principle.
Yep.
And figuring out, what's the 20% of what I do that really creates 80% of my results. And so that's something I've been really introspective about in the context of the last 2 years. And I love building buildings, super fun. That's not the part for me that moves the biggest needle, but I still love doing it and enjoy that process of, like, it went from dirt and then there's this building. And then when I say be building buildings, it's all of the amazing people that we work with, right? Yeah. I don't get to swing a hammer enough anymore, and I miss it, right? Like, I miss getting dirty on the job site, and I still love it when it happens, right?
I do too. I just made a post on Facebook about that a couple of weeks ago of, like, I built a woodshed at my house.
Felt good, didn't it?
It's therapeutic. I miss this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I miss working with my hands and building.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you're building a business, like, I don't know, it's just a little bit more ambiguous versus, like, you can see something that it was dirt and now there's something there.
Yes.
There's something really rewarding about that.
Absolutely. My brother-in-law calls it VP, visual progress.
Yeah, I like it.
Like, when there's VP on the job site, that is really good for morale.
Yeah.
When somebody's like, something happened today. Look, there's siding, or there's grass, or, or this all got painted today, or whatever it is, that really helps boost morale and helps projects come together.
Yeah.
And of course, we've made all the mistakes. We've done all the dumb things. We've had all the things go wrong, and I say it over and over. And it was funny. Somebody, so here's the deal in construction. Something goes wrong every day.
Yeah.
Right. That's just construction. Like, something goes wrong every day.
Yeah.
Every day, something's broke, something fell, something didn't show up, something goes wrong every day.
Yeah.
So that's our reality. And this is, again, kind of coming back to the yoga thing and how it shows up in my life, is doing my very best, and I'm not perfect at it, but doing my very best to just end my war with reality and accept things. And it's funny. It's not resignation with resentment or frustration. Sometimes it shows up that way, but it's really more about surrender to the truth as it is. Like, oh, okay, that happened. And if that happens, and I try to the best of my ability, I'm not perfect, that, like, the next words out of my mouth are, so now what?
Yeah.
Like, this happened, and so now what? What did we learn? Like, what do we not want to do again, right? Or what do I not want to do again? Because sometimes I'm the one who's to blame for what went wrong because I forgot to order the thing or do the thing or tell somebody about the thing or, whatever. What do I not want to do again? And what can we do to fix the problem now and, like, minimize the damage and keep moving?
Yep.
Right? And not spend time so much that I think goes wrong. And I see this as I was in the construction business even before being my own GC. I was in the construction business basically for 20 years before that. Is so much, and it was pervasive, and it's gotten worse, is, email CYA and constant finger pointing and blame finding versus, like, being solutions oriented. Yeah. And I just won't function that way. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't do any good. Totally. So I don't know if that was answer your question.
It does, and I'm just sitting here relating so much to what you're saying, and in every aspect. And I think back to, like, working with clients in real estate too. Like, emotions are high, and people are pointing fingers. Well, the seller should do this, or the buyer should do that, or, like, okay, guys. Then, like, what I try to do and try to help agents do is, like, this happened. here are your options.
How do we get together?
This happened on the home inspection. Either you're going to walk away from it, or the sellers are going to fix it, or
they're going to give you a discount.
Exactly.
You're going to fix it.
Like,
Something's
here's the 3 options,
Yep.
and then the conversation is logical around the next 3 options versus, oh my gosh, I'm just freaking out and pointing fingers. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We had Spencer Nicolotti was on the podcast. He had a reel about, what did he say about contractors or babysitters or something?
Like
and it got a lot of heat on social media. But
I think he said contractors are like babysitters.
yeah, he didn't mean it in a demeaning way.
Finding a good one's hard.
Yeah.
But when you find one, hang on to it.
Oh, yeah.
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 So
I can see how that could be misconstrued.
right.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
So what are those key pieces of your team in developing a new property?
Well, first of all, it starts with my inside team, right, which is pretty small, right? All the people that make up the management side of Roush Rentals, and knowing that if you're creating an asset, you've got the ability to manage it well. I see good properties that are poorly managed all the time, and I know that could go better. And making sure that we can manage expectations with our customers, right? I still get to the properties all the time, and our tenants are just awesome, right? I get to know a ton of them, and they're super good people, and you run into at the grocery store and all that stuff, which gets hard to do when you have a lot of units.
Yeah.
And so it starts out with the key people that are just managing that relationship with the customer, right? I like to think that we are friendly, firm, and fair, right? Like we're all about helping our tenants and doing the best we can within the context of the rules, and we're also firm and fair in the context of the rules. Like we don't do the special treatment, we don't do whatever, and we try to uphold the same standards to everybody, right? So that is super key. And then the next part that's super key is having awesome people on my design team. And I've taken a larger and larger role over time in the design aspects of all of our properties. And that happens because I work so closely with the management side, getting all the feedback. Because they're in the units while people are living there. How do people live? What are the amenities they really want? What are the things that are important to them that really benefit how they live? And there's so many things that can be done from a property perspective to make something better without making it a lot more expensive. It's just more intelligent design, right? So the design aspect. And then when it comes to implementation, it's just having the right people on your team that you don't have to babysit, right? Yeah. That are self-starting, smart, they got good people that work for them, and that they're interested also in a long-term relationship, right? Like, so I think those are the pieces, right? Is what are we doing from a management perspective to manage expectations for our customers? What are we doing from a design perspective to really make a great product for our customers and a great product that we can build at the right price? And then having all the right people on our contracting teams to get that stuff done. So that's what I'd say are the 3 chunks that make that up.
I just want to point this out to people, and you keep referring to your tenants as customers.
Yeah.
And your building as a product. And I think too many investors just see a building as a building and
it's a
tenants as a tenant. And that's it's just an investment for me, and I put a tenant in there, I get a lease signed, and then
I make money.
Hopefully make money off of it. But this is a business for you. And the gentleman we had on last week, he said that was his biggest mindset shift is when he saw these go from just investments and passive income to him as like, this is a business that has customers, that has a team of people that operate this business, and the business is managed by people.
P.S. It's their home.
Yes, exactly.
They live there.
Right.
They live there.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. But I think most people just don't really see it as that.
I know.
You mentioned freedom and passive income, and like all of that stuff is true and achievable through real estate more so than any other investment, I believe. But it's not passive, like completely hands off.
This
like
is not a mutual fund where you just like bought it on Fidelity and went the paper assets where they don't require hands on. No, it's not passive.
Yeah.
It is active, and you can make it passive for a while.
Yeah.
Right, and then the quality of your product and the quality of your customer will reflect that.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You stop taking care of your property, and then your tenants stop taking care of your property, and then so starts the spiral dwindle.
Yeah.
Right? So starts the spiral dwindle. And then it goes back to everybody loses then.
Yeah.
Everybody loses in that deal.
Yeah. So, sorry, Keegan, you haven't talked yet. Do you have anything to say? Otherwise, I got a question. You see so many new developments going up in the La Crosse area, and somebody like me thinks, how many can La Crosse hold? Like when you go to do this project, like when I go buy a property, generally it has tenants that are existing in it.
Sure.
And I know kind of what I can charge for rent, and if I make it a little nicer, I can charge a little more. But at least I have like a baseline, and I know people are going to rent it. Like
sure. And
you're
everything rents for
starting with 100% vacancy, right? And how do you know when a market starts to become too saturated, and if you actually have a product that is needed?
Well, Sam Zell would tell me I'm crazy.
I'm glad you brought up his name. Keep going.
Sam Zell would tell me I'm crazy, right? There's like he'd say, Nick, there's too much risk in that. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, if I knew Sam.
Yeah.
And well, how do you know when a market is saturated?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Well, in La Crosse, greater La Crosse area. So when I say La Crosse, I say greater La Crosse area. So I mean La Crosse, Holman, Onalaska, West Salem, greater La Crosse. Vacancy in the rental market is essentially a statistical zero, right? It hovers around 1 or 2%. And the only reason it hovers around 1 or 2% is because of properties that are either out of service, meaning unrentable, or they're in the process of turnover and getting remodeled, right? That's the only reason that exists. And there's a few layers. This may take a bit to
That's
answer.
fine. Yeah, this is good. I
get asked this every day. I get this asked every day. Every day somebody says to me, where are all these people coming from?
for
Those
sure.
exact words.
Yeah.
Where are all these people
That's
coming
the question
from?
people want to know.
Oh, yeah. And thank God we have room for these people in La Crosse, Wisconsin, USA, right? And our greater La Crosse area. All the communities around here, which I'm invested in multiple. They're fantastic. And they all have their different flavors, which is great. Okay. We're at statistical zero. And the backlog in demand for existing units is super high, right? Talk to any rental agency and, they've either got a waiting list or they've got, a backlog of folks. If there's vacancies or openings, we are generally at Roush Rentals, we're showing 60 days out from lease start. And we generally don't have anything available immediately ever, right? And that's not me patting myself on the back. That's all the major rental companies are kind of like that. Everybody is, because the demand is so high. So why is that? Well, a good friend of mine is in HR over at Quick Trip. We had some conversations, and at any given time, Quick Trip is about 10% short, roughly, of workforce for Greater La Crosse between stores and corporate, right? They need people all the time. Gunderson, same, needs people all the time. Mayo, same, needs people all the time, right? They have needs for humans to do all the awesome stuff that they do far beyond, their normal employment, right? So why can't they get these people?
No place to live.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's nowhere for them to live,
Yeah.
right? There's nowhere for them to live. You see the same thing on the single-family home side.
Yeah.
Look at how demand has propped up price even with 8-point loans,
Yeah.
right? Same. So there's all this pent-up demand. And when I look at the stopgap of growth for all of our businesses in the area, they're only struggling because they need people. And the reason they can't get the people is there's nowhere for them to live, right? So this is backlog, this vacuum of units that's there. And that's not changing. These large businesses aren't going anywhere, right? So there's this backlog of units, and that's just to fill the vacuum. That isn't even to get to a place of what I would call a healthy vacancy, where healthy vacancy is really between like 5 and 7%, in larger markets. So there's that. You've got this vacuum. Second thing you've got is a large flight of people away from major metros, right? I mean, we look at people fleeing, like even the whole state of California, right? Lots of New England places, right? The things that happened during the pandemic where people said, I'm not going to live here. This is nuts, right? People fleeing Chicago, Minneapolis, right?
A ton in this area.
You know, and so La Crosse is just like this great sized town where you've got great restaurants, you've got killer landscape, and there's rivers and bluffs and hiking and trails and good schools and all the things that exist in our area. And with that flight, because of those things, putting lots of pressure. Then the third piece of pressure that comes in there's like kind of 5 in my mind. Third piece of pressure is people's lives are so much more portable than they ever used to be. I can work for Google and live on the south side of La Crosse, right? I don't have to be in Silicon Valley to work for Silicon Valley. I don't have to be wherever to work for whomever because of so much more work remote. And so now people can leverage those jobs, work in less expensive or live in less expensive markets, that less crime, better schools, walkability, tons of outdoor stuff to do. And so our greater La Crosse area it's gravity, man. It's beautiful around here. We're so lucky. As much as I travel, it's gorgeous here. Even in the winter, right? For people that like to do the winter stuff. So there's that piece. And then, we talked about the vacuum that's there, talked about the need for employers, talked about the movement from big cities. And then on the rental side in general, a big shift in what's happening socioeconomically and demographics for younger people, right? Because I'm getting kind of old, so I get to say younger people. I'm still fitting somewhat young, although, I fool everybody until my beard turned white. So there's a couple things there. Household formation is happening later in life than it did for people in Gen X, Gen Y age, right? So instead of people getting married in like sometimes late teens, early 20s, household formation happening sooner, now it's happening where typically the number for, the couple starts with a 3, right? So in general, that house purchase doesn't tend to happen until household formation happens. So people are spending a longer time in the rental market. As a result of that, they want nicer places to live. And so that raises the bar in what the rental market looks like. And so that puts more pressure on the amount of rental housing. Couple that with obscenely higher student debt than used to exist compared to income, let's say 15 or 20 years ago, as the secondary education market has continued to charge more and more and more for less and less and less. And that, has put people in a place where they want to live in a nice place. They want amenities that come along with a nice place. And because of the student debt and then where income falls, this is starting to self-correct now. That puts even more pressure on the rental housing market. So you start to add all that stuff up, and now you've got a ton of pent-up demand, right? And even just, do the simple math on the vacancy calculation thing. Let's say it's statistical 0. How many people live in Greater La Crosse? Any idea? Population?
150,000-ish?
With the students are here, about 120 static population, roughly, let's say, right? And how much of that's rental?
Half.
About half, yep. So that's 60,000 people. 5% of 60,000.
You got me.
3,000. Yes, Keegan. Attaboy.
Hey, look at that. That's my voice.
He's on the radar.
Math question.
Keegan joined us.
Bam. Keegan is with us.
I was just waiting for a math question. Boom,
Nice.
bing. Nailed it, too.
Right? That was awesome.
3,000.
So great. So 3,000, right? Yeah. So what's that tell you? It says that the backlog just to get to a 5% vacancy rate without any additional demand is 3,000 units.
Yeah.
Okay. Last piece of the puzzle. And this was actually said to me, so I'm regurgitating a friend's word, and I won't tell everybody who it was. But he said to me, he goes, Nick, we're not competing with each other. We're competing with other communities to bring people here, right? We're competing with Appleton, Fond du Lac, other 100,000-ish population areas with having great places for people to live, whether they're my tenants or 360's tenants or Three Amigos tenants or Spencer's tenants or your tenants or whomever, right?
Yep.
We're not competing with each other. We're competing with other markets to bring folks here, right? And so making that as attractive as possible for that to occur. And then you add all these factors together, and demand is high And still, if I'm the, out of town, big city developer people, right?
Yeah.
2x4 is the same price in Milwaukee as they are in La Crosse. And if they can build buildings in Milwaukee where they can get $250 a square foot in rent, versus building something in La Crosse where they're going to get $1.50 or less, they're going to build in Milwaukee. So up until River Point District happening, there really hasn't been a lot of big city out of town development because there hasn't been anything big enough size, scope, whatever. And so
interesting
to put a cap on the whole question, I know it's been kind of an oration, so forgive me.
Good.
The layperson says, where are all these people coming from? They see all these units going up. It's like, okay, we're going to finish. We have a 43 unit under construction now. It'll finish up. Tenants will start moving in May and finish up in June. And it's going fantastic. Thanks to everybody else, all these amazing people I work with. And they'll see that 43 unit going up and another 100 unit over here and another, 50 unit over there or whatever it is. I mean, that's 200 units. 200 units, 120,000 people.
Yeah, it's really not.
It's really a small number.
Yeah.
It feels big and it seems that way because it's changing. But in terms of absolute relative numbers, it's a pretty small number.
So
big answer. Sorry about all that.
What percent is there's a different type of tenant that's going to live in your unit?
Yes.
Than they are going
Who
to
is
live
our
in
customer?
mine,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I have older properties that are remodeled. I can't get the rent that you can get, and we probably have different customers.
Sure.
So what percent of that is going to be your customers versus my customers?
The answer is all.
Okay.
Right? Because as there is if there's correlated economic growth in an area, you're going to see growth at every income strata.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's the person who's bussing tables at the restaurant, to the person who owns the restaurant, to the person who's the patron at the restaurant and works wherever, all things in between, right? Because when there's more humans, there's more service jobs. When there's more humans, there's more manufacturing jobs. There's more, service jobs. There's more healthcare. There's more of everything. Yeah. So the answer is they all grow together.
Yeah.
Right? And so, who's my customer? My customer is full-time working people is the bread and butter of who our customer is. We rent to everybody, young professionals all the way to empty nesters and everybody in between.
Yeah.
And we design our buildings very specifically to kind of create a little village atmosphere. And it's pretty cool how everybody gets to know each other, which is awesome. But my hope is, you're at a full-time job at Quick Trip, you can afford to live at Roush Rentals, right? You've got a full-time job doing whatever at the hospital, you can afford to live at Roush Rentals, right? And we're going to give you nice amenities, beautiful finishes, nice interiors, all that stuff at a really high value price. I call it, small A affordable, right? Like capital A affordable, that kind of falls into the subsidized housing and income qualified. And then small A affordable is you're a working person and you can afford to live there, right? And that I think is the peak of the bell curve of what's really needed in a community. Because if I can fill that, all the other jobs, income strata can happen around that, right? Feed the bread and butter in the middle, right? And they have more customers there too.
Yeah.
So you talked about creating a village. Hey, I'm back. Hey! You talked about creating
back on the radar.
Creating a village and some of the unique amenities. What are some things specific to your buildings, either design style or whatever?
Well, I can't give away all the secrets.
Yeah. That maybe just, I know we're not in competition with each other.
No,
You're not in competition with Austin. That set you apart, or that you like to just do just for your customer even.
Right. Well, this will sound trivial. It's not. It's the ongoing joke. It doesn't cost more money to pick good colors.
Amen.
Doesn't cost more money to pick good colors. Sometimes I see buildings, I'm like, really? Really? What?
That's discount paint right there.
Yeah. Or, you look at the online pictures and it's like, okay, there is the selection of everything that was on sale that week at Menards and Home Depot.
Yeah.
Right? And not that it's not quality stuff, but it's like somebody playing jazz. Instead of there being a melody, it's like beep, bong, beep. It's like we got the dark cabinets with the purple this and the something that. And I'm like, dude. Yeah. So the first thing is amenities is architecturally pleasing, right? That there's that we build interiors where it's like, oh, clearly all this stuff was picked out together. This stuff was meant to go together, right? Nice flooring, nice carpets, nice doors, trim, cabinets, kitchens. So just architecturally pleasing environment, right? Big parking. Parking. I will parking soapbox until the day I don't do this anymore. Here's the deal. This is Wisconsin. It's really cold, like 5 months out of the year.
Except for this year, praise God.
Right? Dude, right? Yeah.
First nice
Except
winter.
this year.
Thanks, global warming.
Yeah, well, right. Well, funny story. You were probably in grade school when this happened, but I remember like 20 plus years ago, we were playing golf at Drugan's in February in shorts.
Really?
It was like 74 degrees, and it was like that for a week. We were all just joking, like, we got to take a golf vacation without to fly anywhere. It's crazy, right?
People in California are coming to La Crosse for vacation. Like, holy cow, it's 65 and sunny there.
Not usually like this.
Right.
But, it's Wisconsin. It's cold. And people and so as a result of that, people have cars.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And this very in vogue trend to try to plan and legislate people out of their cars is a totally failed experiment and can really result in some incredibly bad things from a development perspective. Because if you underpark a development and everything around it is built up, you can't fix that problem.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And one of the top reasons that we get customers from other people's development is because of rent issues, management issues, and parking problems.
That's interesting.
So parking, right? We adequately park the place and try to figure out adequate parking for their guests, because these people that live there, it's their home. They have friends that come and visit them.
Yeah.
They need somewhere to park too, right? Like,
duh.
You'd
think.
You would think, right? Yes, Keegan, like you'd think, duh, but
there is an additional cost to you in that.
For sure.
Opportunity cost that you could do with that space.
For sure.
And your slogan is, hey, rent from us. Your friends can't come, but you can.
Right. Well, and it's funny, people, they'll move into a spot and they won't understand the unintended consequences of living there till they're there.
Yeah.
And they're there for a year and they're like, this place was noisy. They emptied the dumpsters at 2:00 in the morning. It's in this place or whatever. And there's nowhere to park, or I got to park across the street in the ramp and do this and that. And I got to carry my groceries for 2 blocks to get to my place. And this sucks. So really being mindful with the design, parking is a big deal. So architecturally pleasing, in and out, parking, big deal. And then inside, where do I go with my stuff? Like, where do I put my stuff? Because we got stuff. So how do we integrate storage space into the building, right? So people have somewhere to go with their Christmas crap, their luggage, their stereo boxes, their golf clubs, their bicycles. Like, where do they go with their stuff? And that doesn't, if you will tell them we'll put their stuff in their clothes closet. No, my clothes go in the clothes closet, right? Right?
My 12-foot Christmas tree can't go in there.
Correct. Exactly. With the lights built in.
Yeah.
Right? So where do I go with my stuff? And then inside my space, what can I build in for amenities? Like, how do we integrate linen closets and pantries and places to go with, all the other things? How do we build in laundry rooms that you can close the door on? And some of the places we have that, some don't. And it's like, oh, that becomes a really important thing. So just being really intelligent with the design to make good use of space and other amenities too. Sounds trivial, but like, what can you do to help soundproof a unit? What can you do to try to make it as good of an experience for that tenant? With what are you doing with how you do sheetrock, how you separate the construction of the building to separate walls from walls? What are you doing with insulation? All those things that help make for a more pleasing experience for the tenant. So those are some of the things that we try to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you do your own GC work. You're the GC on the project. Like, ballpark, what is the cost savings to you in doing that versus hiring someone?
Boy, hard to say. At a minimum, 10 points. I would say, depending upon who's doing the work and all the things, it could be as much as 30. Yep. Yeah,
that's
it's significant.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's a job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't run itself.
Yep.
We got job meetings every week. I got stuff going on all the time behind the scenes.
Yep.
And part of what my work is, and I have to be more and more mindful as time has gone on about the things I say yes to and the things I say no to. That's been like my life's work, and telling myself the truth and figuring that stuff out is I'm not just working on the project that I'm on, because how long was that flywheel?
Yeah.
18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
What are we doing in a year? What are we doing in 2 years? Because now all these people that I have these great relationships with, well, I want to keep them busy.
For sure.
We built straight through the pandemic. We didn't stop at all. And it was apparent to me, like, if I press pause on this, I'm going to put 100 people out of work in the middle of God knows what is going on right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not just working on the project that we're working on today. I'm working on where are we going? What are we doing? I'm doing the city hall thing. I'm doing the neighborhood thing on the next thing, and trying to grease the skids for the trajectory that we're on versus just where we're at today.
What have been some of your biggest, all of this is great and it's getting me excited to go build a building. But
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I actually don't want to. But it's, this is all great, but I'm sure you have had some huge challenges doing this. Like, what have been some of those
Massively stupid shit.
What have been some of those biggest learning lessons for you in the new construction space?
Biggest learning lessons in new construction space. Make sure you have the right people on your team, like wrong people on your team, and a bad apple can spoil a bunch. You get negative Nancy on the.
What?
He just dropped a. Like, bad apple can spoil a bunch. You get negative Nancy on the team, and and they can drag people down, and just always finding something to complain about. So really getting the right people on the bus. And I've had the wrong people on the bus multiple times, right? Because sometimes you just can't know till you know.
Yeah.
Till you've hired them and worked with them, and people who presented one way and showed up another way. Happens all the time. So have right people on the team. Being really clear of, am I doing this project because I can or because I should? I have forced the square peg into the round hole, right? Like, I'm sure if I whittle this dang thing enough and hit it a few more times, I can make this happen. And in hindsight, like, oh, why did I do this? Oof. So being mindful about where you're placing your time, right? Soil conditions. What are you buying for dirt? What's underneath the pretty grass on the top? I learned the hard way on a job site that had $250,000 in soil corrections I didn't know about until we started digging a hole. And we dug into a huge ribbon of organics. So organics is, basically decayed plant matter that's in a layer of soil. Sometimes there can be lots of it, little bits of it. And if you build a building on top of that, well, the building's weight will crush it, and then the building will sink. And so you basically have a choice. You can either excavate it all out and put in fresh dirt and subcompact it, or you can drive piles through it, or geopiers, or all kinds of stuff, all of which costs a ton of money. And if your purchase price of the land didn't take that into account, well, that's going to smart.
Yeah.
You're going to pay for that, and I have. So that's super important, soil conditions. And then I think it's just doing a good job with the things I talked about at first. The neighborhood relationship, the municipality relationship. These people are going to be your partners and your neighbors. Don't make enemies, because then you're just enemies forever, and that's no fun for you or them, right? So really being mindful of relationship. I remember we had kind of an ambulance chaser sort of person when we were building a building that said that while we were tearing the building down, that it caused damage to something on their property. And it didn't. It was like a concrete fish pond that was 40 years old and hadn't been used, and it was cracked. And it was like, dude, this has clearly been cracked for a long time.
Yeah.
Killed my koi.
Right? Yeah. And it had been a college rental for however many years, and, whatever. So like that was, so, making friends with your neighbors. And I made lemonade out of the lemons on that deal. And so, just being mindful of those relationships. But, and then the last piece I think that is just critically important is just being really aware of your costs and being really aware of contingency. Like, you just got to carry money in your deal for things that you just don't know because you can't. Like, you just don't know because you can't. And as many times as I've built stuff, like, oh, this is an interesting $50,000 surprise. Yeah. And the thing about development is it can look really sexy from the road, but the numbers can get really big and really scary really fast. And so being really clear on your costs, being really clear on what you're doing so that you know the water you're getting into, right? You're not just jumping in with the sharks and waiting to see what happens, right?
Yeah,
So.
I've learned that lesson in flipping. I haven't done a ton of flipping until this past year when rates were higher. It's like, well, I'm not going to stop buying. So I started doing some flipping. And, man, if you think the project's 40, it's 50. If you think it's 50, it's 65. And if you think you're going to get it done in 3 months and just floor and paint, it's 6 months.
Yep.
So just, but you don't know that stuff until you go and you do it. So,
which goes back to your comment earlier. It's not passive.
Yes. For sure.
It's not passive,
Yeah.
right? You didn't buy a mutual fund.
Yeah.
You bought something that you have to be engaged with.
Yep.
And I'm not throwing rocks at third-party managers. And at the end of the day, they just don't have as much skin in the game as you do.
For sure.
So they're not going to treat it with the same level of respect or care that you would as, being personally managed.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why only like 10% of new landlords make it past the first year. And only 10% of those make it past the 5th year. All right, the attrition levels.
Doing okay. I'm on
doing
year
okay.
5.
Yep, attaboy.
This is where he sells it all.
Nick, we haven't talked about yoga.
Yeah.
So we're at an hour here, but tell us a little bit about yoga.
Well, so yoga is not something that I do. Something that's part of who I am.
Okay.
And so how did I get into yoga? Well, that's because of my wife, Mandy, who's amazing. And she found yoga practice in her own return to health. So I will tell her story quickly.
Sure.
She was working in health education, a health promotion for one of the local healthcare organizations after college. And her own health kind of fell away from her, right? She, and I'm not saying anything wrong or bad. This is all stories she's told me at times. She got pretty overweight, and always carried it well. She didn't necessarily look like that because she's tall. She's 6 feet tall. I'm 6'3", and but she got to a place where she was feeling really unwell, and also that she wasn't walking the talk, right? And so yoga started out for her as a way for her to reconnect with herself, right? Because the beauty of yoga practice is, I say this all the time, I invite you guys to come to my class. Please come to my class, right? Come to any class at Root Down, but I'm inviting you to mine and meet all the people, right? We have such amazing teachers and amazing people. But the beauty of yoga practice is however you're showing up is perfect. There's no judgment and there's no doing it the right way. It's just, it shows up. However you're showing up is perfect. And it allows you to reconnect with yourself. How am I feeling in my physical body? How's my soul feeling? Like, what's going on for me, right? And so that worked for her and beginning to reconnect with herself. And then she started to run. And running for her at first was, run a block, walk a block. Run a block, walk a block. Run 2, walk 1. Fast forward about 18 months, she lost over 90 pounds.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Lost over 90 pounds and ran her first marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, like, whoa. Makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
Seriously. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And that practice and the things that came with that just changed everything for her. And then she was still working in health promotion, and yoga had been a huge part of changing her life. And she, in conversation with one of our first yoga teachers, who teaches for us now at the studio,
cool,
and is still super close friend of ours. Her name's Beth. And she was teaching at the place where Mandy was working, said, you ought to teach to Mandy. You ought to teach yoga. And so she went to her first teacher training, and this new person came home on the airplane. And I picked her up in the cities and just listened for 2 hours, her whole story. And it was super compelling for me. And I'd been practicing kind of off and on. Because I'll be honest, I've been gifted with an absurdly high metabolism my whole life, right? So I was always like a skinny fat person, right? Like I could just eat burgers and pizza and whatever, and I just like it didn't show up for me, right? Yeah. And I kind of got away with it, right? And Mandy wanted to start teaching, and I was kind of dabbling in yoga, but I was the typical like working tons of hours, ignoring my own health. I was trying to make my own little dent in the universe, right? And who I was at that time, right? And to coin a phrase, and I don't know if this is explicit rated podcast or whatever, but this phrase that came up, I spent a lot of years in my life of what I would call, I'll show you fuckers, right? Like I kind of had a hard time growing up, a lot of challenging times with a lot of things. And like I had something to prove to everybody, myself and everybody around me. And that was sort of what propelled me a lot, right, wrong, or otherwise. Yeah. Great things out of that, challenging things out of that, things I'm still unwinding to this day, right? Where like, I don't really have anything to prove anymore, right? I really have more to prove to myself and my relationships with the people around me, right? So yoga practice happened, and we wanted to start doing hot classes. And so it started in our garage. I was in the HVAC business. We put a furnace in there, really? And let's heat the garage up, and it was garage yoga. And we had friends and family coming, and it was 1 class a week, and it was 2 classes a week, and it was like 6 classes a week. And then people started calling us, like, do you do the hot yoga? Maybe. Who's this? Right? And after doing that for a few years, Annie left her job in health promotion. Then she became the landlord for a while. She was helping in management stuff for Roush Rentals. And that wasn't her calling, which is okay. And the idea of Root Down Yoga started. And we owned the building on Caledonia Street where we are now, because my job rented from us downstairs, Masters Building Solutions. And the upstairs was nothing but a house for bats. Really? Right? It was just bad. And layers on layers on layers of build outs since 1893 when the building was built, right? And like you guys know how big a 50-yard dumpster is if you've done flips. We filled 9 of them.
Oh my God.
With the demo. 9 of them. And I'm talking like every square inch, filled. Like just packing it in there, right? 9 50-yarders with the demo. And so the idea of Root Down started, and we opened up on 11/11/11, and which is 11 is a big number in Mandy's life. And so that was the day that we opened. And we hoped that, one day 20 people would show up for a yoga class. That could happen. We built the studio big to fit people. And the first night, Friday night, 70 people showed up for yoga on the first night. We were like, whoa. And it blew up. We were the first studio in town that offered what we did and how we offer it. It just blew up beyond all blow up. And of course, things have changed a bit now, right? As other places have opened and things of the sort. But still, I'm proud to say, a really successful place. And when I say successful, it's a place of awesome community, connection, people making lifelong friendships. All of our teaching staff is amazing. We go to each other's classes all the time. I practice probably 4 or 5 days a week, and I teach a couple days a week and a couple classes a week. And it's really central to who we are and what we do.
Very cool.
Yeah. Is that a complete answer?
No, that's great.
That's Root Down Yoga. Please come.
I always thought hot yoga was when Austin went stretching with the shirt off.
Oh my God.
Right?
Careful, Haas. You're scaring the Phillies away.
This is the Pick on Austin episode, I guess.
Evidently.
What are you talking about? That was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys come to my class sometime.
Yeah.
I really do. I hope you come to
invite.
any class, right?
Yeah.
First class is free. Yeah. Please show up. Just show up ready to sweat and move. Don't worry if you don't know the moves. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right? And I think you might find something you really enjoy. Cool. So, yeah, that's Root Down.
Good.
That's Root Down.
Well, thank you for your time and being here, Nick. I learned a lot about new construction, new development, and yoga at the end. This was great.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, you guys. It's been a real pleasure. Cool. Yeah, hopefully other people can learn something here and hopefully become customers of ours or people that work with us and help this awesome community flourish and come see us at yoga.
There you go.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Appreciate you guys.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We sincerely hope that you learned something today and found value in today's episode. And as always, we appreciate your support and hope that you can all find a way this week to pay it forward.